Coming through.
Welcome to the Educate US podcast with your host, Nick Saveri, Dr. Stacey Schultz, and Dr. Patrice Fenton. Three former teachers and administrators talking about a wide range of topics happening in education. Time to educate us.
Hello, welcome, Educate US listeners. It's so great to be back with you another week. Today we have an amazing guest, Michelle Cummings. Michelle knew from an early age that she wanted to be a teacher, and we're going to talk about that. Her career spans roles in K-12 education as a teacher, both elementary and high school principal, and an assistant superintendent, both in the US and Switzerland. Michelle received the National Women in Leadership Award from School Superintendent Association. In 2019, Michelle moved into educational technology. First, she served as the Chief Academic Officer at Teachers Pay Teachers, and in a conversation, I got to catch up with her about bringing some efficacy, right, to that Teacher Pay Teacher, so thank you for that, and is currently serving as Education Advisor at Brisk Teaching. Michelle additionally is the author of the First Year Teacher's Survival Guide, don't we all need that, which is the 5th edition, published by Josie Bass. Her work reflects a deep understanding of art, science, and future of teaching. She graduated from Brown University and earned her EDM at Harvard Graduate School of Education. She was born and raised in New Orleans, and she now lives in New York City. Welcome, Michelle. It's so good to have you.
Thank you, Stacey. I'm delighted to be here. Hi, Patrice.
Hey, Michelle. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have you with us.
Awesome. So I know, Michelle, you went on an amazing trip recently, but we're not going to start there. We're going to go there for sure. Before we do, I want to come back to that in the bio. You said, and you mentioned this to me in a conversation as well, right? That you knew you always wanted to be a teacher. And I have to say, it's so powerful to hear that. And I loved the story you shared. I hope you'll share it with the listeners as well. But what was it like knowing that you wanted to be a teacher? Was it a gradual realization, a sudden epiphany, or something else entirely?
I love the way that you framed that. It was a knowing. I enjoyed school. I had teachers that I found to be creative and caring. I grew up one of 8 children, and I had a ready-made classroom. So when at 7 or 8 years old, I asked for a chalkboard, I had one in my home and could practice with my siblings and the neighbor students. When I was in high school, I apprenticed myself to the lobbyist for the New Orleans Public Schools. I had written on all of my career path paperwork as a student that I wanted to be the superintendent of schools in New Orleans and improve educational opportunities for students in my community. I chose my college because Ted Sizer was at Brown University and I wanted to learn from him. I had been introduced to Ted Sizer in high school by my mother, who was very education reform minded. And she would bring new programs to our schools. She would go to education conferences. She would even take us when we were on family vacations to model schools in different parts of the country. And so I always said to her that she set me on my path. And in college, I got to work in one of the first essential schools. I got to meet Elliot Washer, who created Big Picture Schools, with Dennis Littke, and he has been a lifelong mentor. I got to study with Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot. I was so guided by extraordinary mentors and educators. I felt like my career choice was reinforced really each step of that way. And then as I became a teacher and could find ways to uplift my students, and as a principal, hopefully uplift the whole of the school and improve educational outcomes for students. I found at the district level that creating a school system that uplifted teachers and families and students was very powerful. And then now in ed tech, being able to work with educators and with product developers and visionaries to solve some of the most important problems for teachers and with teachers and their students. I I don't think it was an epiphany. I think that it was a a confident knowing and a sense inside of myself that I wanted a purpose and something larger than me to be working towards. And I found that in a career in education.
Amazing. My hat goes off. And I just love the evolution of your journey as well. I'm really glad to hear your story and happy you shared it with us and with our listeners. I not like you at all. I may have shared with our listeners before. My mom and my aunt, they used to always say I should be a teacher, and I looked at them like they had two heads growing out of their neck. Was not interested, even though just like you, I love school. I had very wonderful experiences in public school. And so there was probably something inside of me that was like, I want to teach, but I would have never owned it ever, ever, ever. So kudos to you for owning it from the very start. I love it. But that actually has us thinking about the state of the teacher workforce today and the fact that less and less young people are choosing teaching as a career path. Curious about your perspective on that, particularly as through all the different seats you've sat in the education space. What are your perspectives on that, and what do you think is contributing to that fact?
That's such an important topic. It is a national tragedy that we have the teaching shortage that we have when education makes every profession possible, when education can change the trajectory of a child's life, when education is responsible for economic development and opportunities. It is an absolute travesty that we have a teaching shortage, and yet we do. And Patrice, I would start answering that question by saying that systems get the results they're designed to achieve. Systems get the results they're designed to achieve. And so we have a teaching shortage and we need to redesign the system. We have not just teaching shortage, but we have a teaching profession that doesn't represent the students in our classrooms and needs to be diversified, that the pipeline to teaching needs to be diversified. I believe that the next generation, millennials, Gen Z, who are entering the teaching profession right now or choosing not to, they demand mission-driven organization, and education has that. But they also want more collaboration, more flexibility. They want more support. They want financial security and autonomy. And so schools don't always reflect that. I think they are starting to shift and show some of that. I was talking to a teacher recently who said since COVID, there has been flexibility on days when students aren't present to actually work from home and do your grading or your administrative tasks. I think we also need to change the national conversation, right? Where do we honor educators? Where is the awards show that's like the Emmys or the Oscars, for education? And that would be an indication of the esteem with which in which we held teachers. I think that teacher innovators and heroes should be household names. And if we do all of those things and increase salaries and benefits and provide alternate career pathways so that people don't have to pay incredible tuition to become teachers and then not get a paycheck for at least a whole year while they're doing their student teaching. There are places that have 1 year paid residencies for teachers as part of their career pathways. We need to learn from that. We need to scale some of those solutions. And I think that in education, we have to provide space for teacher voice, choice, and agency, just as we want to have teachers allow for student voice, choice, and agency. We need to have space in governance structures within schools. Anyway, and finally, I think teachers need the resources and support that they need to constantly be learning, just like we expect doctors to use up-to-date procedures and all of that. Teachers are one of the few professions that has a tax credit because they're expected to spend their own money on the supplies that they need. And so I'm sorry, I got on a soapbox. This is something I'm really passionate about. But those are a few of my thoughts as to why we're in this situation and what we need to do to shift it.
Please don't be sorry. If you're watching us on YouTube, you saw Patrice and I both shaking our head. No, 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 don't be sorry. We love this. This is it. This is it. This is it. Right? These are the conversations that we don't hear enough of. Right? What can we really be doing to uplift this profession? Right? We're hearing so much in the news about how public education or education in general, but public education is being really shouted out that it's failing. It's failing our students. And if we look around the world, they're passing these exams with flying colors. And something that's really interesting, right? When you look at these standardized assessments in some of these countries that they're comparing the US to, one of the things that's very true is that teaching is a highly respected profession. So some of those things, Michelle, that you pointed out are some of the things that around like these countries that are doing well on these exams that our government likes to talk a lot about is like they have done some of what you're saying. They have uplifted the profession, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's respect, there's autonomy, there's learning, right? There is no buying your own supplies, right? To your point. And it's generally speaking a financially viable option, right? To support a family. And so there are some things, I think I just wanted to shine a little light on the fact that not only can we scale some of the solutions here, but looking around the world, like how do we adopt some of those processes that they've been doing for years inside of our country.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just wanted to connect with you on that. Patrice, I don't know if you want to add anything before we kind of continue.
No, not at all. I just want to say soapbox is totally fine here. So please don't apologize. I was with you every step of the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes. And I guess actually just staying on this a little bit, what is your response to that comment of schools are failing kids? And the way we know schools are failing kids is because 7 out of 10 of students are not, and I want you to know I did not fact check, nor do I know if this is an accurate statistic, but just something that's consistently out there, right? 7 out of 10 kids are not reading or performing math on grade level. So I want to note, I do not know if that's an actual, where that number come from, nor do I know it's true, if it's true. But what I know is it's something we hear again and again. What are some of your responses to that?
The NAEP scores are abysmal. That's true. We owe it to our students and our families to make sure that students are building the skills and the knowledge base that they need to navigate life and to have unlimited potential for what their futures will be, to have choices of what their futures will be in college and career readiness. I would say that as a system, the American school systems are not getting results for students. And back to my previous comment about systems getting the results that they are designed to achieve, we need to look at why that's happening and what systems are doing it better and learn internationally from schools where there is success, learn within our own country where those pockets of success are. You look at the NAEP report, and they actually have a section of that report that's called Pockets of Success. And we could be looking at Washington, D.C., and we could be looking at Alabama. We could be looking at Mississippi, and I never thought I would be saying that. Do you know Mississippi has gone in recent years from the bottom of all the rankings in the country to 30th out of 50th, which is moving up for Mississippi because they're closing the achievement gap in fourth grade. And they are making gains. And you look at their strategic plan and how they've done that, I think we need to learn from them. There is a lack of sharing of what works in education, and we need to do better as a country and as a profession to accelerate that learning and build a better system.
What you're saying ultimately, I totally agree, right? Like we need to do better as a system to share, spotlight those pockets of success. The other thing that I want to challenge is these standardized tests aren't the only way to know what are our students getting? What are they learning? How are they preparing? So I wonder, when you, and not saying that you don't agree with that, but I'm wondering what are your, thoughts around that element? Because that's something that I feel like we don't talk enough about, actually.
Sure. We use multiple choice tests because they're easy to administer and to assess. We know that there are entire countries like New Zealand that don't offer multiple choice exams. They use performance tasks and other things. We know that even on the Smarter Balanced assessment, there were performance tasks for students to do. We need to have multiple measures of success and multiple measures of understanding how students are learning and growing, just as we need to have multiple pathways for students to go through schools and to have educational opportunities. I couldn't agree with you more that our current system of even evaluating the success of our schools is limited.
Yeah, and it begs the question, like, where do we even start? There's so much that needs to be re-examined. I heard you ask the question, why? It made me think about this root cause exercise that I often do with groups, where you're constantly asking that question until you get to the bottom, the root of the issue. Which then reminds me of this quote around what it means to be radical, which is actually getting to the root, right? So I appreciate your call to really look at these systems and understand that they're doing pretty much what they've been designed to do, and asking ourselves, well, why is that, and what can we do to change them? I would love to, and something else that you mentioned too is like we have these pockets of success domestically. There's also quite a few, I would say, examples of success outside of the country. I do want to call out, though, that the US context is a very unique one. I'm not sure that it can be compared to any other, quite honestly, across the globe. So I do want to name that. It's very, very important, right? A lot of other countries where we do see success, those populations are homogenous and their histories aren't as fraught as ours is, and there's a whole lot there, right? So I do want to call that out. However, and nonetheless, we do have some examples, right, of things that are happening and happening well and successfully in other places that could be informative and instructive to us here domestically. Um, you recently were invited to Southeast Asia, if that's correct, to speak about your book, speaking of international lens. So we were really curious about that experience, just in general, experience of going there, but of course also about your book. So we'd love to hear about both.
Thank you. Um, I was invited by the East Asian Regional Council of Schools to travel to Kuala Lumpur for their teacher conference. And this is a conference of teachers who are and administrators who are working in East Asia in international schools. It was a there was a poetic kind of full circle moment for me there because the person who introduced my keynote was a director at International School Services, and I had attended an ISS conference, a job fair, when I landed a teaching position in an international school in Switzerland. And so I had taught English and social studies in Switzerland for 2 years, and it was wonderful to be among the international school community again. I um, I had the opportunity to work with educators for several days around kind of three themes from the First Year Teacher Survival Guide. Um, and we were focusing on relationship development. We were focusing on resilience, both for educators and for students, and revolutionary technology like brisk teaching and how that not only can support teacher efficiency and but also student engagement and inspiring learning. So I think the thing that is so unique about the international school community is this powerful focus that they have on global citizenship. You know, to our previous conversation about evaluating the success of schools, they, in all of their mission statements and in all of the ways that they frame their success, they talk about creating global citizens who have intercultural understanding, who study in an interdisciplinary way. And I think that's reflected very profoundly in the international school commitment to the International Baccalaureate. These are students who are often moving around because of their families' jobs into many different countries. And it was really exciting to spend time learning from them, as well as providing some sessions and a keynote for them.
I was getting lost in that story and thinking a little bit about the power of global citizenship, right? I mean, just to ground yourself on that is so powerful, right? And what values, what learning then will you need to be able to do that? And that it sounded, that it almost felt like the value of learning each other's culture and how that feeds into us knowing and respecting one another and further our learning, right? Because that's what learning is, this engagement and interaction, this socialness. And so,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yes,
sorry, I think you want to respond.
you think about the very culture and makeup of an international school community. The assumption is that students are multilingual. The assumption is that students are from many different backgrounds and countries and cultures, and that there is a richness there,
Yeah,
and it becomes
yeah.
part of the intentional curriculum of the schools to celebrate and to learn from each other.
Yeah, that's so powerful, right? And to Patrice's point earlier, when we try to compare ourselves to other school systems, sometimes that's hard, right? Because of some of the things you just called out, which schools, international schools, are actually celebrating and integrating into the curriculum and into the school really meaningfully. And there seems to be, an opportunity there. That seems like to be a really powerful learning.
There's a key piece to what Patrice was pointing out as well, and let me know if you think I'm on track here, Patrice. The United States public education system is bold and audacious in its desire to educate every child for college and career. The fact that we have a federal law, IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that says that every child will have a free and appropriate public education, that we will engage in child find and identify children in need of additional support and are legally bound to provide that support. That is not a given in every country in the world. It is not a given that education is free in K-12. It is not a given that you're even required to attend. It's not a given that you have a full day of school. Many nations still have a part-time, half-day program. 4 hours a day is all that they are able to provide for their students. And so I appreciate that call out about the unique project that is the American education system.
It's so beautiful when you say it that way, right? It's so actually beautiful. And when we think about that, if that's the mission and purpose, right, then how do we design the system more meaningfully against that, right? It's like there, Patrice, you're talking about getting at the root and talking about the why, like what is this really created and the why of it, and then how do we design from there is a really just beautiful invitation. Actually, you can kind of see what could grow from that. We're gonna circle back a little to your book because first year teaching is hard. I'm not even sure I completely remember September to November of my first year teaching. I'm just gonna be like super honest. I mean, I couldn't if you really pressed me, maybe, but I'm pretty sure I can't, it's not reliable. That time period is not reliable at all. So, what are some of the things in your book that you offer those new teachers in navigating that challenge? And I want to say, I know career changers too. So it's not just because some first year teachers are also very young. I think it is any first year teacher at any point in their career that really experience this, right? The challenge.
Stacey, I remember my first year of teaching too. And my first day, I remember that I didn't want to hold papers because my hands were shaking so much and the students would know how nervous I was. One of my former students who went into education, she told me she wore a skirt the first day because her knees were knocking and she thought that it would cover it up. So I vividly remember that. The first year teacher survival guide is not the best title because there is so much in here for experienced teachers. And I don't want first year teachers just to survive. I want them to thrive. And so I went into the writing of this book with this lens that that we know teaching is difficult and that creating a 500-page reference guide of all things teaching to support teachers and their students to think about the strategies and tools that they need, the activities that they could immediately use. I found that a very intense project. The idea that this book would need to speak to teachers from all backgrounds, serving students from all backgrounds. The fact that that I needed to interview 65 or more teachers to make sure that I had a finger on the pulse of what the needs were for teachers. All of that went into the writing of this book. It's organized in 14 sections. And it has everything from establishing yourself as a professional and productivity tips to how to build positive relationships with students and families and your colleagues. And what happens if there's conflict at work and how do you navigate that? I tried um, to share ideas about designing and facilitating learning that would be workable across grade levels and content areas. I, of course, dove into artificial intelligence and digital tools and how you select the right tools for the right purpose. But I think that some of the best feedback that I've gotten from first year teachers that I've worked with, someone said that this was a warm weighted blanket for first year teachers and for all of those that support them because mentors are using it as a text to support first year teachers as well. And so the first year teachers are telling me that the uh, developing positive relationships chapters are extremely helpful for them, that being able to understand how to differentiate for their learners has been super helpful, that the 3 sections on classroom management and positive discipline and restorative practices have been very helpful. But there are also some very interesting and unique topics that I explored in there. Of course, generative AI can be very overwhelming for folks, and I tried to break down the ways to think about the use of AI. But also things like how to teach civil discourse, how to teach sustainability, climate, and energy within your classroom. And, and of course, a whole lot of support around social emotional learning because our students are asking us to show up differently in that. And so my hope is that this gives courage to teachers, first year or otherwise, who can look into this reference guide and find just what they need at that moment and some ways of thinking through some challenges and a whole lot of inspiration and tools that they can immediately use.
Amazing. I remember my first year, unfortunately, fortunately, and it was quite a ride. And so this sounds like just such a gem for a first year teacher to have. Just because there's just so much. I don't think that anyone bargains for how much goes into the act of teaching. It's one of the most rewarding, but also, can be taxing. So having something to support you in a really holistic fashion is just incredible. Um, Very curious about the generative AI piece, and we're going to get there before we close out. But I would love for you to just name for our listeners and any aspiring first year teachers, anyone getting ready to get into the classroom this coming fall, if you could whisper one question into the ears of every first year teacher, a question they rarely ask but need to ask, what would it be? Because we often don't know what we don't know, and I think that's a big issue with going into the classroom. So what would that question be?
This is a question that I'm whispering into a first year teacher's ear that I want them to be asking themselves. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
I'm going to go back to our conversation earlier about voice, choice, and agency. I think that's important for the teaching profession. I also think it's important for our classroom. So I would hope that first year teachers are asking, how am I inviting student voice, choice, and agency into the classroom? How am I helping students to identify their interests and develop skills to ask and answer really big questions. Like, that's two questions. I guess I didn't stick to the assignment, but those are things that, I think often first year teachers understandably are worried about how to get to know their students, how to address parent concerns, how to deal with creating a classroom community where there are fewer disruptions, how to address student behavior, disruptive behaviors. And I think that sometimes they miss that question about how to invite students in to co-create the curriculum that can also take care of some of the behaviors.
And as you said, you wrote the book for not just first year teachers, and those are questions that not just first year teachers could ask, right? And should ask. So thank you for kind of bringing that almost full circle. So you were mentioning some of the topics, right, in your book. We've talked about some of the, uncertainty and challenges that the education system is facing. But in our conversations, Michelle, you bring such a level of optimism and hope, in about education. So I'm really curious, and for our listeners, we like to end on a positive, hopeful note, right? And so with staying on brand, we really want to hear from you. Like, what are some of those core things that are fueling that optimism right now? What's giving you hope for the future of education?
That is a beautiful question. And I think that in our classrooms, we have to give our students reasons for hope too. I remember doing a English teacher audit of the books and the literature that we were offering our students and realizing that we might be contributing to depression and anxiety because we weren't offering the hope and the heroes. And so I hope educators are thinking about that for their students as well. What are reasons for hope? I think of four things off the top of my head. The first is honestly the teachers and administrators that I meet around the country and around the world. I think that there is so much going on in larger systems that we cannot control. And there are teachers and administrators every single day doing what they can do locally to improve educational opportunities and outcomes for students. And their passion and dedication and innovations inspire me. Uh, I would say that generally speaking, my second reason for hope is that we're in 2025 and in all the history of the world, we have the best tools to be able to improve education for students. We have AI assistants like Brisk that will take care of so much that would normally take teachers away from that one-on-one interpersonal engagement with students that it is extraordinary that that can help teacher efficiency. It is extraordinary that generative AI used ethically, responsibly, and teaching our students how to use it ethically and responsibly can accelerate learning. We hear from Ethan Mollick at the University of Pennsylvania that in his AI required courses, students are taking on bigger problems to solve. The idea that every student can have a personalized AI tutor 24/7 to support their learning. Students can learn from anyone, anywhere in the world, at any time, and that is exciting to me. We talked about a third reason for hope, and that's those pockets of success, those pockets of innovation and excellence that I see that change lives and um, and not only provide students the knowledge and skills that they need uh, and help them to pass those multiple choice tests, but literally to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. Those schools that create internships and real world experiences for students, those schools that create project-based learning where students are taking on real world challenges and the educators are making sure they have the mentorship and the resources they need to pursue that learning. Those are reasons for hope. And I don't know, I think I've done 3 of my 4. My fourth, I have hope because failure isn't an option.
What a powerful conversation to especially follow the conversation that we just released last week.
Indeed, I was thinking the same exact thing. The same thing. It's like the perfect segue into this conversation.
Yeah, because we were talking about this, the pockets of success, the pockets of, or rather the boldness, right? We didn't use those words, which I really love, the boldness and audacity of the public education system, but talking about it through what we were hearing through young people. I mean,
yeah. We have another episode in the books. We want to thank you, our listeners, of course, for listening to Educate US, a proud member of the Leon Media Network. Make sure to download us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening via Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave us those 5 stars. They really help us out. And of course, have to check us out on our YouTube channel, which we have to commit to really promoting. Well, we're getting there. We're getting there. Bear with us, listeners. And make sure to join the conversation by emailing us, of course, at theeducateusshow@gmail.com. That's theeducateusshow@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone.